we all have the same challenges where we want to feel better tomorrow. We don't want to feel better in 5 weeks. And so that's where Methylene Blue's come in and been a gigantic lever for me. And then also learning how to, regulate the GABA system and also support the immune system as well. I mean, the immune system is a big part here. When you're in that sympathetic for a long period of time, your immune system takes a huge hit.
Living with autoimmunity doesn't mean settling for less. Inspired Living with Autoimmunity is the show for high achievers who want the energy and vitality to live fully, not just manage symptoms. With your host and autoimmune coach, Julie Howton. It's time to take your power back.
Dr. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, Julie. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited for this conversation because I know literally every listener, whether they're listening for a loved one or themselves, like we all have certain things that we need to be really conscientious about in today's world with today's lifestyle. But before we jump in, I want to know a little bit more about how you became, because you're so passionate about not only helping people, but educating providers and practitioners as well. So how did you get into this world?
Yeah, well, it all starts when you're born, I guess. That's how we get into this world.
Sure.
And for me, it started there too, because, well, my father's a chiropractor.
Yes.
And so I was adjusted when I was born, and I was adjusted throughout my life, of course, as being the son of a chiropractor. So I grew up very, very much out of the box in his practice, everything from coloring in the front and running around in my soccer clothing when I was older, and then working the front desk when I was in high school and collecting money. But I always loved the work he did. And it was so novel looking back at it, because he was the first person, that I even knew about. Well, even looking in retrospect, even people like around that same time frame, taking people off of dairy, for example, and seeing their allergies and their asthma go away. We were on these crazy macrobiotic diets in the 80s, and we were eating things like, was it cherub or something like that? The carob? It was not the chocolate.
Not
it was the
carob. Yeah.
The carob. Yeah. And the cherub, something else.
Oh.
But I was eating that crap, and it was like, that. And so I was very much raised in a way that was like, what? There's a lot you can do outside the medical system.
Yes.
But I didn't even know what the medical system was. And when I was in high school, it was a question was whether I was going to be a chiropractor like my dad, because I really liked what he did, or as I was going to do something like get conventional training and then figure it out. And actually it was his urging at that time that said, hey, you know what? Get the medical degree, because I'm limited. He was limited and still is as a chiropractor as what he could do with his licensure. And so I decided to go to medical school knowing zero about allopathic medicine, basically.
Okay.
So it was a bit of
you came from
shock.
The other world that's a little backwards. Yeah.
A bit of a shock. And so most people in my shoes, the people that go into the integrative world, functional, whatever side of things, they typically have their own experience where the system fails them, or they have a family member that doesn't get better or gets failed by the system. That's often the path. But for me, it was different because I grew up out of the box already. And so I dove into the box in allopathic medical school and trauma centers and things like that. And I decided to be an internal medicine doc because it was kind of my fastest way out, actually. And so it was 4 years of medical school, 3 years of residency. Yeah. And then so I over the last now 15 years or so, I've developed an integrative practice around multiple different things. It started off with a real significant focus on hyperbaric oxygen therapy as being kind of the main therapy that I used. And then over the years, it's more gravitated towards being, that's a great technology, but I have a foundational practice called health optimization medicine. That's based on a nonprofit that I help run, that's training practitioners on how to optimize health. And I know you know about that too, Julie, and being at some of our conferences.
Yes.
And so we have this nonprofit that trains, that's what the framework that we train in, I use via telemedicine here just outside of Boulder, Colorado, where I live. And then I have a couple companies that I help run, one called Troscriptions, which is a company that helps people right now along that path to optimizing health. And so that's, I think that's my story in a nutshell.
I love it. And we talk about that at the clinic as well, of I didn't go to medical school. You have a big toolbox, right? Like a truly integrative practice is like, let's not throw out allopathic medicine, and but you get to use lifestyle tools. I do want to talk a little bit about hyperbaric as well, because I think it's so underutilized. But I know there's only, maybe we'll do another, have a whole nother conversation.
There's only so much time.
I know. I know they all play. I love that, listeners can already tell, like, there's not one thing that solves everybody's health problem. But I do think, like I said before, that we all have some very similar just lifestyle things that we need to be addressing. I've heard you talk about before the sympathetic spiral. And I think, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's for my autoimmune audience. Of course, there's not an audience it's really not for, but it just really, really resonates.
It's more poignant.
It is.
In some cases, yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And I really think back when I first started, we would get to stress management and we would get to mindset and we would, and now it's like, oh no, wait, that's not let's do that later. Like, it's like, let's start with how do we get people out of the sympathetic state? So share with us a little bit about your version of what is the sympathetic spiral of doom.
Sure.
And then obviously, because we're a positive podcast, we're going to talk about some steps people can take.
Of course. Yeah. And so it's a pattern that I've recognized over the last, many years, but didn't really understand and put it together until recently. And the idea really is that we have this combination of sympathetic activation, which is, so your sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight nervous system. It's the one that's supposed to have you have you run away from a lion that's chasing you, for example. But we have these little lions that are chasing us every day with notifications on your phone, your kids, your parents, your relationships, your job,
traffic,
and people are, and traffic, sure. And a chronic medical condition too. And so that's also
Pain.
Important where,
and
I'll get into that here in a minute, but it's not to say that it always has to be from outside, in the sense that stress can come internally from just significant dysfunction of a part of your cell specifically that's called the mitochondria. And so, but to start off, to continue with the sympathetic side, is that sympathetic dominance overdrive, that causes a lot of hormones to get released, like cortisol. You have neurotransmitters like norepinephrine and epinephrine. Those are putting a lot of stress on the system in general. And then where we make most of our energy is in the mitochondria in the body. The mitochondria are the part of the cell that makes energy. We have some cells in the body that have thousands of mitochondria. We have some cells in the body that have very few. Where we have the most energy demands is where we have the most mitochondria. And so reproductive organs are actually the number one place where the most mitochondria are per cell. Right after that is the brain, and then the heart, the liver, the musculoskeletal tissue, et cetera. And so if you have this sympathetic activation all the time, you're really trying to get a lot of energy to be made at all times. If you're telling your cells, I need energy right now because I'm getting chased by something, even if it's just you doom scrolling on your phone or getting upset about politics or whatever it might be.
Right.
And so, as a result of that, the mitochondria get a lot of stress as a result of that. And it's not only the sympathetic side of things that can do this. The mitochondria can get stressed from a lot of different things. Insulin resistance. So if your blood sugars are high, if you have chronic autoimmune condition, you have mitochondrial depletion of antioxidants, for example, that can also do it. Infections, toxins, medications, post-infectious syndromes, hormone dysregulation, hormone changes, especially during perimenopause, is a very big one. When you don't have as much estrogen around, estrogen's a fantastic mitochondrial enhancer. And that's why when your estrogen levels are higher as a female, like during ovulation, you feel great. That's the one you usually typically feel the best. And so in any regard, you have these mitochondria that get a lot of stress themselves because of either internal things that are happening, like hormone changes or toxicity or autoimmunity, or external things that from an external world that's causing a lot of stress. And then the mitochondria stop making as much energy, or making as much energy effectively. And then as a result of that, you get less energy, but your system still needs more because you're requiring it. And then you get into the spiral where you're trying to make more, but you can't make more energy, and trying to stress the system more to make more energy. And so in the end, you're left with a place where you're in this, what I call the sympathetic spiral, and that has a very nice alternative, which I call the parasympathetic edge, actually.
I love it.
Which you can teach and you can learn. But you have to understand that when you're looking to really optimize your biology, you have to think about it not only from the stress perspective, but also the energy perspective too. And so if you're listening and you're wondering, well, am I in this spiral? The answer is that
Probably.
Most of us are in this on some level of spectrum,
Sure.
right? And if you're a couple of different things that I can come to mind, if you're having, some symptoms that are really common are, feeling wired but tired, very, very difficult to get good sleep, for example, poor sleep architecture, poor deep sleep, difficulty with your mood. You feel like your mood's up and down all the time. It's not stable when it used to be, for example, and it's not just related to your cycle or something like that. You find that your recovery is not as good. Your mood and your mental health overall could be worse, more depression, more anxiety, more insomnia. These are all symptoms of potentially having, a part of being in the sympathetic spiral. And the major challenge, as I know you know, Julie, is that most people don't even realize that they're even in this spiral at all, or that they're even having this fight or flight constantly.
I love that you brought that up, because I was thinking that as you were talking, the people get confused by the well, I don't feel stressed out. That's not what we're talking about. We're actually talking about the physiological state.
Right.
Because so many people have just, kind of become used to, well, this is how it is. And so you don't have to be aware of feeling like you are stressed to be in this state. And so I love that you said that, because I get that a lot. And then people tell me kind of about their lives, and I'm like, wow, well, I'm stressed out. But I just think it's because it's been so long since they've stepped into the parasympathetic state that they just don't even feel it anymore.
100%. And it's the compensatory mechanisms that are at play.
Survival.
And so you might have, yes, exactly. And they're physical. Oftentimes people that have chronic sympathetic dominance get physical symptoms more than they get mental symptoms. And this is my physiology as well, personally, where I know when I start getting a headache right here, it's anxiety, right? Or it's something that's more like stress related, right?
Yeah.
And so I know some people are more physically manifesting of these kinds of symptoms. And so the key is to be able to give people the experience of bringing their nervous system down and having them feel like they're back in that parasympathetic. But that is not without a little bit of risk, because when you are driving real hard and then you put the brakes on, it can be a bit of a shock to the system, and you can get reactive anxiety as possible as the system's kind of breaking down, or coming back down. And I'm sure you've seen this in practice.
I have totally seen it in practice, but I love that you say it, because honestly, as many conversations as we've had about stress on the podcast, nobody's actually put it so eloquently. And it is more common, and it does make sense if you think of this is their normal. And so the whole point is about not feeling the stress. And so when you step out of that, you get a stress response because it feels weird.
Yeah. But what I found a really great mitigation strategy is, though, Julie, is a sequencing of how you bring the stress down. And you do this with first supporting mitochondrial function, actually. And this is where methylene blue comes into the story, which is very interesting in my world, because I'm always looking for ways, as many clinicians are to helping our patients through the bottlenecks that they get stuck in as they're trying to optimize their health. And energy and anxiety are the number one and number two problems, or number one and number two complaints of everybody. I talk to clinicians all over the world. Number one complaint is either energy or anxiety. Number two is either energy or anxiety. And so it's the same thing. But in the end, they're a loop, as I just described to you, right? Energy, anxiety loop. That's maybe what I should call it instead. And then,
I like that.
This is an energy anxiety loop.
Yeah.
And so, poor energy, I'll think about it. I have to think of a better way to describe it, but that's really what I'm talking about here. And so, what I've found to be successful or helpful here is that you support the energy side of things first. So giving energy, a little bit of energy support. And then
we're
after
talking about
energy support,
cellular energy.
Cellular energy, yes.
Yeah.
Cellular energy support. Once you give some cellular energy support, then you have more capacity to decrease somebody's sympathetic overdrive, so get them into parasympathetic without causing that crash that might happen otherwise.
That's it's so brilliant. And I wanted, and we're going to go through the, like, what can people do in that supportive order. But I want to talk about methylene blue.
Let's do it.
Because I think, gosh, the first time I crossed your path, it was only us biohackers that were playing with methylene blue, or, other than for the kind of classic uses of like thrush and just, the way it's been being used for a really long time. So I want you to give us, if you would, like a brief history of it. And then I want to talk about why you're hearing about it all over the place, including also some do's and don'ts for people. Because I think it's important, because not everybody takes the time to understand and research, and it is a chemical compound.
So that's a good place to start. So methylene blue is a synthetic material. It's the first fully synthetic drug that was ever registered with the FDA back in 1897. So 1897. It was actually first developed in the 1870s as a textile for dyeing things blue, because it is a very, very blue pigment. As many of you likely know, it goes in the body blue and it comes out blue. So you urinate blue out when you have methylene blue orally. Yes. And so the first thing to say there is that, as you kind of mentioned as the kind of the ending of your question, is that methylene blue is synthetic. It doesn't come from the ground. And people in the world of, my dad, for example, when I was a kid, he would have been militantly against anything that wasn't natural from the ground. But now he very much understands that there's a place for everything.
Sure.
Right?
Well, and so I say lead is natural. Like there's a lot of also natural, mercury. Like there's a lot of natural stuff that's also not health supporting.
Right.
So
right. And when I was in medical school, I saw 2 people die of liver failure from foraging the wrong mushrooms. And so there you go.
Respect.
Right? And then, right. But on the synthetic side, let's talk about that, right? So is everything synthetic bad for us? So if you're taking insulin right now, that's synthetic, by the way. It's not coming from a pig. So you're alive because you're getting synthetic insulin.
Right.
Also, we live in a synthetic world. Like we have synthetic everything around us all the time. And sometimes on occasion, hopefully not forever, we need something synthetic to help us.
Sure.
And a good example of this is my son, who's now 8. But when he was 4, I watched him, I saw him have a tracking cellulitis, a skin infection going up his leg. And I was like, that's not good. I'm an internal medicine doc. I know what that is. And watching it go up his leg was scary. And I was like, okay, I need to bring him to the hospital, give him antibiotics. Antibiotics are synthetic. And so if you don't get a synthetic antibiotic in that case, there's a very high chance you may die, right? From septic shock and all those kinds of things. And so I think that the way I think of methylene blue in general, and I'll talk about the mechanisms and things, is that it's a fantastic bridge for people that are having a really challenging time, or you need to get a little bit further down the path to get them over some humps that have been really, really challenging. And over the long term, it can be used less as a result of not needing it as much if you've gotten over a lot of those humps, for example.
I love that. Not a lot of people tend to think, first of all, this mentality of, if I need this thing, I need it forever. Number one. Number two is like, oh, this is good. More is better. There's all these. So I love that you're really being real with us in that. It's a tool.
I mean, I'm a clinician.
Yeah.
Julie, we know it's so difficult to speak in absolutes.
Of course.
Although that's what everybody loves, is that you need this many times a week for whatever, right? And so I think it's interesting, and especially when methylene was gotten so popular over the last year and a half or so. It's definitely been much more of that, right? Like methylene blue is poison. Methylene blue is synthetic.
Everybody
methylene blue is going to make your brain blue.
Right.
Or the other side. Or everybody needs methylene blue. You need to be taking it every day. And this, so it's difficult to have that nuanced discussion, but I think that it's really important, right? Because the way I think about it is that you have a very significant spectrum of dosing that's to be looking at as well. And then what's your goal within that dosing that's going to be most effective for you? And so in the end, between 1897 and 1950, methylene blue was the premier antimicrobial around. It's a fantastic antimicrobial. It kills bacteria, fungus, and virus. And it does it very well, actually. Doses are usually higher, around 1 milligram per kilogram to 2 milligrams per kilogram. So about 50 to 150 milligrams of methylene blue. It increases hydrogen peroxide production to do that. But after the 1950s, we had penicillin, and it was much more significant. You know, we needed, it's great that we have penicillin and things like that. But methylene blue was not as interesting after that. And so it became less interesting to use it. It made your urine blue, all these kinds of things.
Right.
And so a couple of different chapters from there. The first antipsychotics were actually derived from methylene blue because it has the capacity to increase serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine as a monoamine oxidase inhibitor in a dose-dependent way. And then from there, it's been used in cellular staining, cellular marking, surgeries, things like that for many, many, many years. But we also know, and this is where it comes, I think the most interesting, is that it really has significant impact on mitochondrial function. The capacity for us to improve mitochondrial function by enhancing energy capacity, both enhancing ATP production, which is our energy currency, as well as our capacity to detox from the energy that we make. And I think the important piece to think about there is that with our cellular metabolism, the way we make energy normally, we make ATP, which is our energy currency, but we also make water, carbon dioxide, and free radicals when we do that. That's kind of like more like a gasoline powered car, where methylene blue comes in and works more like an electric powered car. It brings energy in, but it becomes its own neutralizer of oxidative stress, neutralizer of free radicals. And so it doesn't cause a lot of additional stress in the system at low doses. We're talking doses around 4, 8, up to maybe 25 milligrams on most occasions, sometimes a little bit higher, sometimes a little bit lower. But in general, that's your mitochondrial support dose. And when you have statistics out there where 94% of US adults have some element of mitochondrial dysfunction. This is why methylene blue can be so powerful and can be such a great bridge for people to get their energy back, and then also start breaking this spiral that I've been describing, because now the cells have enough energy to be able to stop putting out signals that you need to get more stress more to get more energy, and that cycle doesn't work.
Right. And I think that so many live on that. You know, we were talking about anxiety and energy, and again, back to even like, you don't have to feel stressed out. Like, most high achievers have anxiety. That's what drives them to be high achievers, even if it's not having a negative impact on their life, but physiologically it's still that kind of same high level sympathetic, tone. Like,
that's the thing. Like, it's important to realize that
it's not all bad.
Exactly. Stress is not all bad, right? But it's not all good either, right? We're supposed to be able to mount a stress response, whether it be physically or emotionally, and then be able to be resilient enough that we can drop back down. The classic example is an animal that's being chased by some sort of animal of prey or a predatory animal, and they somehow get away. They don't, get killed by the animal. If you look on the National Geographic, you can see what these animals typically do is that they have a massive stress release that happens within about 30 seconds.
And then
they're back to, exactly. Just like Taylor Swift, right? And then from there, going back to like forage on their, plants.
It's like, okay.
That's technically what we're supposed to do.
Right.
But we have these things called, parts of our brains that animals don't have, right? We have cerebrums, right? We have this frontal lobe. Like, this doesn't exist in animals. And that gives us a lot of potential, right? But it also has the capacity for us to do all the things that make us not get rid of that stress response.
So I want to a couple more questions about methylene blue, or almost cautions. I want to know, so we're talking about what has been typically, at least in my lifetime, used as more of an industrial chemical. So sourcing, like, what are mistakes that people, you already hit the, like, it's not an end all be all. Dosing is really important. I believe sourcing is really important. That's why I use Troscriptions. But share with us a little bit of, because when something is exciting, I remember when I was fatigued and in pain and, listening to podcasts, and I would be like, oh my gosh, if I was listening to this, I would want to run out and get Methylene Blue. And so I want listeners to be savvy.
I appreciate you asking. And it's an important one because methylene blue is made in a lab. So it's not made from nature, as we were describing. And during the manufacturing process, it's very common for methylene blue to be contaminated with heavy metals, especially lead, mercury, cadmium, and arsenic. And those are not things that you really want because they're not really good for your mitochondria or for your body in general. And you have to be super careful because there are tons of people selling methylene blue on the market now. When our company came out, in 2020, Troscriptions, we were the first company to come out with a commercial product at that time. And it took us 1.5 years longer to launch the company than we initially anticipated. It took us that long to find a clean source. And we've done a lot of testing of other products on the market. Liquids are probably the worst as far as culprits. Their purity is usually not what it says on the label, and their potency, which means if it says it's 10 milligrams per drop or whatever, it's often about half that on average. Okay. And so you're getting a lot of companies or a lot of people out there that try to ride on trends. And as a result of that, even if it says it's pharmaceutical grade or USP, which is the name with the letters we give for pharmaceutical grade, it often doesn't meet that criteria. And the deal is this, that when you get an ingredient from a company, from a manufacturer, you get something called a certificate of analysis with it. Right. That certificate of analysis is supposed to be an independent testing of that ingredient and then giving you the specifications of that ingredient, and it doesn't meet your specifications or not, right? If you're getting the ingredients from another country, or really even from the United States as well, but especially from another country, that is supposedly an independent analysis, but it's also a company that works with the company that makes the ingredient, right? And so what we do is that we get all of our ingredients, methylene blue and other things that come in from other countries, and we test it again. We test it with another independent lab in the United States before we put it into manufacturing. And if anybody's telling you they're getting methylene blue that's been made in the United States, they are not telling you the truth. Methylene blue is not made in this country. If it's made in the United States, it might be bottled in the United States, but it's not going to be made. Fun story. I had somebody reach out to me not too long ago. He's like, "Hey doc, I purchased this methylene blue off of Amazon," which is something you should never do, buy any supplements off of Amazon. But he purchased this methylene blue off of Amazon. He's like, "Yeah, doc, they said it was made in the USA, but it took 3 weeks to get through customs." Yeah. So there you go.
Telltale sign.
And so, telltale sign, right? And so Amazon is its own animal. Yes. It's not a place where I think supplements should be purchased because you don't know, unless you're buying it directly from the manufacturer on Amazon and not getting your fancy, lovely, amazing Prime shipping within 2 hours to your home. Everybody loves that, but that's coming from an Amazon warehouse. Right. And those are not well quality controlled, especially for supplements.
Yeah. So amazing. So thank you for sharing. I just, I always like for people to be cautioned. From a medical perspective, is there anybody who should not use methylene blue?
Great question too. So if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, you shouldn't use methylene blue. The risks are actually probably low. The studies aren't great, but at the same time,
but you have to say that
just to be safe. Yes.
Or if you're a non-human, I love the way you have that on the.
Yeah, although there are many,
I'm sure,
veterinarians that are using methylene blue in dogs now, interestingly enough. I have a couple of practitioner friends that were scared initially to take methylene blue themselves back, in 2020, 2021. So they gave it to their dogs. And their dogs did great, so they started taking it too. So, we do know that in dogs it's okay. But so pregnant, breastfeeding for sure. If you don't have kidneys that work, you can't use methylene blue either. So if you're on dialysis, methylene blue is not something you should take because it's concentrated and excreted in the kidneys. If you have chronic kidney disease, you can take methylene blue, but only under practitioner supervision because it's going to stick around for longer. So you have to know exactly when to redose it. It's a little bit trickier, but it's usually when the urine's completely not blue anymore, at the very least.
Gotcha.
And then if you have high blood pressure and you're on antihypertensive medications, or if you're pre-hypertensive, sometimes methylene blue will increase blood pressure. And so you have to be aware of that and go slowly with the dosing, work with the practitioner if you are on blood pressure medications or have a tendency to have higher blood pressure. And then the other big elephant in the room is usually what are called serotonergic drugs, antidepressants. SSRIs, SNRIs, those medications increase serotonin. That's what they do. Sometimes norepinephrine as well, some of the newer generation, where methylene blue increases both serotonin and norepinephrine. It does this in a dose-dependent way, which means that low doses of methylene blue are going to do this a little bit, whereas higher doses are going to do it more. The risk that's talked about in the literature is something called serotonin syndrome.
Okay.
This does not exist using oral methylene blue because there's been no studies to show this. That being said, if you are on one of those medications, it is highly recommended that you work with a practitioner to make sure that it's safe and also that you go slowly with the dosing. Symptomatically, what I've seen there has just been maybe some GI distress, maybe some headaches, that a little bit. That usually go away after a couple of days, but those are more common in people that are on the SSRIs of the world.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, it's going to make your urine blue, so you have to be aware of that. So you have to know it's also a blue pigment, and so if you're cutting it on a surface, make sure it's a dark one. The antidote for getting on a surface is buffered vitamin C.
Oh, really?
And so this has saved my marriage, Julie, at least.
I can only imagine
3 or 4 times. Getting it in my sink on the countertops with scrubbing vitamin C, even in my laundry, even in the washer
I'm
once.
Sure but that's so interesting. We have soapstone counters, and so they're black, but they're also porous. So
Buffer vitamin C is a good one to have around for that. And so you have to be aware of that. And also the just thing to mention is that in some people, they're not going to feel great when they first started. They're going to feel like they're getting a bit of a detox reaction because the system's trying to recalibrate itself. Methylene blue has this amazing capacity to rebuild energy reserve and energy capacity. But when that's happening, it can be a little bit of detoxification is possible, right? And so you have to be aware of that when you're starting to take it. But you also can use methylene blue in detox protocols, which I do all the time because it helps with energy. It helps with the energy side of detox protocol, which can be very draining for people.
Yeah. So, but always a good thank you for giving a thorough warning. And that's why you start low and slow.
Indeed.
and build up. So I want to go back to, I want to leave the spiral, but I want to go back to, so step 1 is supporting that energy so that as we can learn to step out of the sympathetic state, we hopefully it's going to help us from having a sympathetic reaction. So what else can listeners be doing to be moving toward what I would consider an optimal healing state?
Yeah. So you need energy to have less anxiety is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I've solidified now in this podcast. So thank you for that. But when it comes down to it is that we want to give people a runway. Like it's hard for people to know, as we were describing, how it feels to have that nervous system calm down.
Right.
And so I can tell people to calm down, but that doesn't work.
Right.
Try that to your partner, right?
You don't.
Funny, my son, you don't do it. Yeah, my son who's 8 years old. I have 3 daughters, and he's the youngest. This is my son.
Okay.
He's my 4th, and he's like, "Dad, what are some things you don't tell girls?"
Did you ask him how much time he has?
Yes, I was like, there's probably like 4 or 5 things you just don't say.
Yeah.
But one of them is to tell them to calm down.
Yeah.
We don't have to go through the whole list here, but all of you listening can imagine the other things that I told them.
It's really cute.
Just like you don't tell girls or women that they look tired. You don't say that ever either.
Or fat, or
there's many. But
you're wearing.
But I was going more exactly. Yeah. So in any respect, you don't tell people to calm down, and even telling them to try to do breath work or yoga, meditation can be very, very difficult because they don't know where there is anymore, that parasympathetic state is.
Yeah.
And so I found that, we have a suite of products at our company that I like a lot, and the reason that we developed them was because we need the brakes. What are the brakes of the brain? And that's the GABA system. GABA is your primary neurotransmitter that relaxes the brain's firing. And everybody knows about serotonin and norepinephrine and dopamine, but it's actually glutamate and GABA, which are in balance with each other, are that your 80% of your brain's neurotransmission. Glutamate's your primary active one or excitable one, and then you have your GABA, which is your primary inhibitory. And in the brain, glutamate gets converted over to GABA and needs vitamin B6 and magnesium to do that, actually. And so if you're magnesium and B6 deficient, you're not going to feel very good because you can't convert over. And in the world that we're in now with sympathetic dominance, GABA deficiency is rampant. It's associated with anxiety, depression, insomnia, tremors, mental health issues, and things like that. And so giving people something that can enhance the GABA system very quickly without causing any potential damage or disturbance like alcohol or benzos or sleep drugs, because those all work on the GABA system, but
not in a good way.
your risk of dependence, intolerance, withdrawal, death, all those things we don't want really.
Right. Not the goal.
Not the goal typically. Yeah. Where what we do and what we've done is looking at the GABA receptor and going, okay, let's give you something that's going to support it without causing any detrimental effects. And so combining things like kava and cannabinoids that are non-psychoactive and something called B3 GABA, which is a cool one because you can't use GABA directly. GABA as a supplement's too big to get across into the brain. If GABA works for you as a supplement, you take it, it's almost a telltale diagnostic sign of having a leaky brain or a brain barrier that's not doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Okay.
Now, don't get too worried. This is common, and the most primary directive here is typically to work on the gut. Typically, the gut is leaky gut, leaky brain.
Yep.
So fix the gut, fix the brain, that kind of thing. And so that's how I usually describe it to my patients. And I've had a number over the years that GABA supplements are working great until we optimize their gut, and then
all of a sudden
they stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
And so if you take GABA doesn't work for you, that's probably a good sign. So we use something called B3 GABA, which is a B3 attached that gets into the brain easily. And we use that in combination for something called Trocom, as B3 GABA, kava, CBD, and CBG, which is great as a formula that really does help with helps with anxiety without depleting your energy.
Gotcha.
Because usually things that decrease anxiety make you feel sedated. But instead of that, it's actually giving you just the anxiety relief without the energy depletion, which is kind of nice.
Which is great. And I'm going to circle back to, again, how we all think we feel. So Trocom can be effective to getting out of this spiral, even if you don't feel anxious.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Right. It gives you the experience of what it actually felt like to be parasympathetic again. And then also sleep is a very big important lever here too. And sometimes honestly, Julia, what I'll do is, if somebody's in the sympathetic spiral, sometimes I'll just start with sleep, even if it's not mitochondrial support first, because sleep is such a huge piece, right? It's going to regulate everything, just depending on where they're starting and where they need to go. But for sleep, we also have some other compounds that we use. One called from magnolia bark called Hinokiol, another one called Agarine from the Amanita muscaria mushroom, which is a psychedelic mushroom, but not psychedelic at low doses.
Gotcha.
It's the mushroom of Santa Claus and Alice in Wonderland and Mario Brothers, if anybody's interested. It's red cap, white spots. But we use just a compound from it that's very safe. And Trozy is what it's called. We're actually trying to address 5 different systems of sleep, not just one. So GABA, melatonin, serotonin, endocannabinoid, and the adenosine system too. That's why it's so comprehensive and so helpful oftentimes. But sleep is a really big piece for everybody. And so if sleep is dysregulated, everything else is going to get dysregulated too. Yeah. And so, but the goal, and as I've mentioned, is that, yes, experience what it feels like to get your nervous system calmed down.
Right. So then we know what we're heading toward.
Yes.
Right. So
exactly.
Amazing. Exactly. And then once you're kind of, because it is almost like, even when you were talking about energy and mitochondria, it's like chicken or egg, right? It can start with mitochondrial dysfunction, or it can lead to mitochondrial dysfunction. And kind of same thing always when we talk about sleep and stress and inflammation and chronic stuff. It's like, we know you need to nail the sleep to heal, to detox, to all the things, regenerate. And so I love that you brought that up, because it is really important. And you guys, you do such a good job of, it's not just this one thing, like, hey, I have this cool one thing.
Yeah. The way I like to frame it for my patients is that we need to give them short-term, medium-term, and long-term capacity, right? And the short-term is probably the most important, because, and that's not true. I think it's just such an important piece.
You can't get to the other two.
You can't get the other ones. Like exactly. That's like, you can't rank them, but if you can't get them through the bottlenecks, then what's the use, right? Like, you tell your patients, oh yeah, don't worry, in 3 or 6 months, you're going to start feeling better. They're going to try to find another practitioner.
Going. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's harder because they want to, and I get it, right? I mean, all of us are in the same, we have the same human, things that we wear every day. And so we all have the same challenges where we want to feel better tomorrow. We don't want to feel better in 5 weeks. Yeah. And so that's where Methylene Blue's come in and been a gigantic lever for me. And then also learning how to regulate the GABA system and also support the immune system as well. I mean, the immune system is a big part here. When you're in that sympathetic for a long period of time, your immune system takes a huge hit. If you're getting sick all the time, you're getting, just anytime any bugs around, you get it. Unless the only exception to this rule, and I was just talking to a young parent the other day. Like I had 4 kids. Like if your young kid is sneezing in your face and snotting on you, there is nothing that you're going to be able to do to prevent you from getting that thing. Okay. There ain't nothing.
I used to tell my kids, like, are you licking the desks? Like, what are you doing? School. Yeah. But they're supposed to be human petri dishes because they're building their immune system.
Yes, exactly. They have to build their immune system to tolerance and things like
that. But adults are not
supposed
to be exposed to those.
Yeah, I knew my kids were getting older when like somebody came in with a GI bug in my house and I didn't get it. I was like, wow, that was amazing. Yeah.
That is a huge win.
It was a win, man. Like those are the worst, as you know.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so I think that the immune system part is big, and we have, there's a number of different ways to do this, but there's a compound that I like called cordycepin from cordyceps, and it's from the mushroom. And cordycepin is about 100 times more strong, more powerful as an antimicrobial, actually, also antiviral specifically, and then anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, which increases deep sleep. So I use that a lot myself when I travel. My kids, we have a little bowl in my house. We call it the green stuff because it's green colored. And everybody's like, Dad, I need the green stuff. Even my wife, who listens to zero of what I say.
It's a very colorful household.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's the green stuff is something my wife will even take. And my wife listens to zero of what I say otherwise.
As she should.
And she's also a physician. So there's that too.
Oh, please. So. Yeah. I don't know if that's better or worse than a physician health coach household.
That's a good question.
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, it's a challenge no matter how you swing it, I think.
Of course. So. It just makes it fun. We're always learning from each other, even if we don't admit it. So it's great.
For sure. Yeah.
So I know listeners are leaning in because I always ask for one step. I'm going to lead you, and then we're going to circle back to a different step, which is how they can get get a hold of Troscriptions.
Sure.
But is there one lifestyle step you would recommend? Again, with what you just shared, with like, we know we need to be able to tap the brakes. We know we need to support energy. Is there lifestyle wise though, something that you believe everybody should be doing?
Focusing on sleep. And this is something that, it sounds simple, but sleep actually doesn't start at night. It starts it's all day. It's a whole day process, everybody.
Early in the morning. Yeah.
We have, Dr. Ted, who's our founder at Troscriptions and our nonprofit, he says something that really hit me, especially as I turned into my 40s. It was, your day doesn't start when you wake up. Your day starts when you go to bed. And the reason why he uses that line is that if you think about it as the first thing you're doing every day rather than the last, then you actually start believing that it matters as much as it does. And so that's the reframe. And then from there, it's understanding that sleep doesn't just start when you hit the pillow. It starts at least 3 hours before that, if not that morning, and how much sunlight you got and things like that. And so I think sleep is the biggest one. So I really try to dial that in with my patients as much as I can. And the goal here, Julia, is to give them the opposite of the spiral of doom, which is the parasympathetic edge.
Right.
And the understanding that when you're more rested, you're more of that parasympathetic more of the time, you're going to show up and do better than you think you are.
Efficient.
People think that you need to be in this sympathetic dominance to get everything done.
Yeah.
It could be helpful sometimes, but it's not helpful all the time. And you'll find that the highest performers in the world, they're not in sympathetic when they're doing their high stress and high performance stuff. They're downshifted a little
bit. So,
they're in flow.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And flow is parasympathetic overall. And so that's really what the goal is, to give you that edge. And so that, yes, if you need to be stressed, you can do it, but then you come back down, right?
Yeah.
And you have the capacity to ride those waves instead of, being on the top. You're just underneath the surface of the water where the waves are crashing, but you're cool. Everything's cool down there, right? And you need to go and ride a wave, go ahead and do it, then get back down,
Right.
And so that's the kind of wave that I'm trying to all of us to kind of help, to ride.
Yeah.
The resilience side of things.
Amazing. So for people who are intrigued and they want to learn more about Troscriptions products, where's the best place for them to go for that? Not Amazon. Spoiler alert.
Yes, we're not on Amazon. Yeah. And yes, please don't get your supplements from Amazon as described. So you can check it out at Troscriptions, which is the name of the company, troscriptions.com. The company's name, Troscriptions, comes from the word troche
and the word even prescription. Get into the troches.
Yeah, so the troche is a dissolvable lozenge that's scored. It has 4 little pieces. It's like a quadrant kind of thing, a quarter, half, or full. You can find the right dose for you. Most of our products are best. Yeah. Start with a quarter and increase your dose from there. Yeah. Most of our products are best in buccal absorption because buccal is going to be faster, so in your upper cheek area, and the ingredients stay more active up there, more potent. Now,
and you can avoid some of the big blue. Like if you tuck it properly, then you don't look all blue.
Yeah, the pure methylene blue, our Just Blue, I do, think is absolutely as good almost when you swallow it.
Oh,
too.
Really?
Yeah, you can swallow it on an empty stomach, especially because methylene blue is highly bioavailable.
Okay.
Now, we have a product called blue cannatine that's a combination of methylene blue with nicotine, caffeine, and CBD.
Don't do that.
That's a little bit different. That one should be in the mouth because it's faster. That will be blue, but not as blue. The Just Blue, swallow it on an empty stomach. Swallow it in the morning.
Okay.
And then eat about 15 to 20 minutes later. That's the second
Sweet
fastest
spot.
way for it to work.
Nice.
Yeah. The first way is in the mouth, but your mouth will turn blue.
And they last a long time. Like they're in there a while.
15 to 30 minutes. Yeah, they dissolve. It takes a while to dissolve. So if you dissolve in the mouth and they're blue, don't talk, don't move it, and keep it as far back as possible. And that's your best bet for keeping it as quarantined as possible in your mouth, I guess. But in general, I swallow it most of the time at this point in my life. And I find that most of my patients do the same.
I'm so excited. I'm totally doing that tomorrow.
Excellent.
I love it.
So you can check it out at Troscriptions.com is the website.
And for people who want to learn more about you specifically, because you're doing all the things from the home hope and the practitioner training to your practice to hopefully you'll come back and talk to us about hyperbaric.
Sure, yeah.
So where is a great place to find more of Dr. Scott?
Well, I think my website is probably the best. It's my name, DrScottSherr.com, drscottsherr.com. That's my website. It has links to Troscriptions. It has links to Health Optimization Medicine and Practice, which is our nonprofit organization. Every year we have a conference. Our next one actually is going to be in October in Chicago at the Drake Hotel. So we'd love anybody that's curious about health topics. You don't have to be a practitioner. Of course, you can be to join us if you'd like. We also have continuing medical education credits available for people that are interested. And then, and you can find me on the socials at Dr. Scott Sherr. We have a pretty nice sized YouTube channel on Troscriptions as well. You can find us as well.
And some great educational videos and just you're always putting out lots of great information. So I say everybody go check it out for sure. Scott, thank you so much for your time and all the wisdom you shared with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been fun.
For everyone listening, remember you can get the transcripts and show notes by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in to Inspired Living with Autoimmunity, hosted by Julie Howton, your autoimmune coach. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone in your life who needs to hear it. For the complete show notes, links, transcripts, and everything discussed today, visit inspiredliving.show. You can also send in your questions there to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Remember, it's time to take your power back.